Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by the Life Force Academy. Life Force Academy, a beautiful way to have great meditation practice, yoga practice, Kundalini yoga practices from wherever you live, but in a way it's fresh, inspired. Stay connected to what's important in our lives, keeping the mind, the body instrument tuned, heart connected to what is the bigger reasons we're here. That's what it's about. Life Force Academy, you can begin your 14-day trial for just $1. If you go to lifeforce.yoga, that's the URL, lifeforce.yoga, just type that into your browser, and you can start a 14-day trial of the Life Force Academy. Check it out, see if you like it. Have a great yoga practice, keep the body healthy, keep the mind intuitively clear, keep the heart connected to a genuine sense of purpose. Lifeforce.yoga. Thanks for listening to the podcast. If you haven't already, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and so on. If you feel inspired to do so, please leave a rating or review, help inspire others, perhaps to listen. Thanks so much, everyone. Greetings, my friends. This is Jai Dave. Thanks for listening today. We have a cool episode of the podcast for you. This is the second of the series of podcasts that were recorded recently at the Envision Festival this last February before the coronavirus pandemic hit. We were in Costa Rica, second year I taught there. I kind of gave some backstory in the previous episode with Rachel Brathen, set the stage, and this is the second episode that we recorded there in the Life Force Academy Lounge. So just for some context there, Envision is a really incredible festival in the jungle of Costa Rica, where so many beautiful things happen. It's so much more than a dance party in the jungle, which it is that, beautifully so. I love going to Envision Festival, and this is where Envision is where I met today's guest. Her name is Sarah Wu. She is one of the co-founders of Envision, actually, and she's a real special person. She has a lot of wisdom. She's a herbalist, but she's so much more than a herbalist. Her business is called Village Witches, and they educate people on really important things that we will need to know if we're going to continue to thrive as a species on planet Earth. Not only plant medicine, permaculture design, and so forth. Just reading from her website, which you can go to villagewitch.org, villagewitch.org. Because I to call Sarah an herbalist would be, I think, limiting. So I wanted to see what her website said. And she said, a representative for Mother Nature as a writer and teacher of deep ecology. I like that term. I like that semantic, deep ecology. I feel that from Sarah. Therapeutic ecology and whole systems design through the lens of herbalism and permaculture. I think that's beautiful. Therapeutic ecology and whole systems design through the lens of herbalism and permaculture. And you'll hear a little bit about that. Yeah, I think you'll catch her vibe in this. But again, this is a conversation we had in the Life Force Academy Lounge between the two yoga halls on a hot day in the jungle of Costa Rica at Envision Festival. We were drinking mate and enjoying the experience. But it is loud. There's a lot going on in there. There was an audience as well listening to us live. And so it was a beautiful, fun experience, a unique podcast this episode. And if you didn't hear the previous one with Rachel Brathen, Yoga Girl, that is available. And then there's the two others that were also recorded at Envision. Stephen Brooks, another co-founder, and Ashley Sargent, the yogini, who also curates all of the yoga programming at Envision Festival. All inspiring people, all very interesting, very different characters. I think you'll enjoy hearing about them. And shout out to Envision Festival for just embracing us, inviting me, and creating such a beautiful experience. Really grateful we got to have that experience before quarantining, likely for this year, maybe longer. Who knows what's ahead of us. So this is really the perfect type of thing, in my opinion, to be listening, to be studying, to be hearing about. Check out villagewitch.org. You can find her also on Instagram, and enjoy the episode with my good friend Sarah Wu.
Village Witch is in the house. The coven is everywhere.
When did you start Village Witch?
That project started in 2015. After I went and did some studies with a teacher of mine, Seven Song, in Nicaragua. And I got really inspired about clinical work. But I also wanted to bring herbalism strong into Envision. So
what year you said that was?
2015.
2015.
So it's a 6-year anniversary.
Cool.
Technically of Village Witches, but 5-year anniversary of the herbal clinic.
It's a really cool brand.
It is.
It
Thanks.
really is.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It's kitschy, huh?
Yeah. It's got a vibe.
Yeah.
I like it a lot.
I really like reclaiming the word witch. And the identity of witch.
I think you're doing that successfully.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
It has an elegance. You know what I mean? Like that's my perception of it when I, observe it.
It's one of the faces of woman. You know, it's like we have all these different female archetypes and everything, but the face of the witch is a really interesting one because witch is pure passion. And in The Witch of Portobello, has anyone ever read that book, Paulo Coelho?
Witch of Portobello. Hey, Aki, can we turn the mics up some? Is it possible? Yeah.
Do you know that book?
I don't know.
Paulo Coelho, it's one of his writings.
I know Paulo Coelho.
Yeah,
I haven't read that.
I love his stuff. I've read a lot of his
Alchemist.
books. Yes. Yeah. But The Witch of Portobello is one of my Bibles, and it's about this woman who is a gypsy orphan who is adopted by a Christian Lebanese family, and they flee Beirut in the war in the 70s, 80s in Lebanon, and they go to the UK, and she takes the name Athena when she's like 8, and she's this powerful woman. They say that like every woman will have like a predominant archetype, like we all embody all the archetypes just like guys do, but like for the female archetypes, like we all have them just like our doshas, but we have a predominant one. And so we have the mother, we have the seductress, we have the virgin, we have the martyr, and we have the witch. And he says that Athena, this woman in the book, embodied all of them, but the witch, they say, is pure passion, so she follows everything straight from here and here, and she doesn't get up into this space. And the character in the book's so beautiful because she's a trance dancer. And she transforms people that way and fakes her own death. It's a good one.
Cool. Definitely reading that.
Yeah.
Village Witch, I'm still learning kind of what it is because I'm, being at Envision, that was when I was first kind of last year exposed to it.
Nice.
And it was intriguing immediately, but now learning a little more about you lately and the work that you're doing. So we just realized when we were talking before this, we were probably about the same exact age, which is cool, same generation. And I have a little background in herbalism, but you've been very much focused on it, yeah?
I have been, yeah.
Where did that start?
Yeah, I have 20 years in. Nice. Slick. Overflow my mate on stage. Yeah. Just don't burn yourself.
No, it's cold water.
Ooh, nice. I'd like a little cold water on mine. Mine's a little hot.
I got you.
Okay.
You talk, I'll pour.
Okay. So herbalism. So my grandmas were plant mamas, and I grew up in upstate New York and Ontario bioregion. So it's one of the Great Lakes. I grew up on the New York side of that area, and just like a U.S. city, Rochester, New York, whatever, but in the suburbs. And beautiful, glacial, old growth forests and everything, dank soil, deep winters. Also a lot of monoculture, at the time it was a lot of wheat and corn, now it's all corn and soy. And, but my grandmothers, both of them, one was really into topiary, and so she always had a really manicured, very kind of English enclosure yard. And then my other grandma had a wilder yard, and her yard would have wild roses and sweet peas, which are these beautiful purple flowers that when I was like in high school, we used to paint with cigarettes because they would change color. And and like burdock and all different kinds of alfalfa and the milkweed, butterfly weeds, and beautiful plants. And she had these plants in her house that were geraniums. And so geraniums have many different phenotypes, meaning that it can be like the same species, but they have different essential oils in them, but they're botanically the same.
Yeah.
And so she had like rose geranium and she had lemon geranium. And I remember like the sensuousness of being with the plants as a child. And I have like such vivid memories of them actually. And growing up in you know, my yard, which was pretty wild, like on cornfields across the street, but woods in the back and stuff. And so, I mean, there's always been like the earth path in me that way. But herbalism in particular is like...
what part of the world are we?
Ontario bioregion,
okay.
so upstate New York.
Cool.
Yeah, on the New York side.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah, and so... you know, like herbalism in particular, if we just give it a quick definition, is working with plants and mushrooms. Even though we're saying herbalism, it is the flora and the fungi kingdom. In a medical way, in a medicinal way, we're activating the plants. And there's many different roads that we walk. Some are the clinical roads, some are the psychospiritual roads, some are the entheogenic roads, some are the home practice roads, some are the community herbalist roads. You know, so there's many different ones. And so at first with herbalism, like I got into it because I was being failed by my pediatrician. I was in high school, so you still like have a pediatrician. I was just getting like chronic earaches and female reproductive stuff, and you know, linked back to dairy allergy, you know, which I figured out pretty quick in university and starting to study nutrition and getting into medicinal plants, like because it was what there are the other options. You know, like I wasn't into the options I had. I was 19, right? So that was just like what my doctor gave me. And then my mom, when I moved away from home and went to university, she gave me my first herb book, and like everything in there just started to kind of come together of like, oh, like there's a whole other path, right? And a whole other way that can heal me from the ground up, from that's much more empowered as well. You know, like once you start studying herbal medicine, once you start studying nutrition, you just like learn about food systems, you learn about the environment, all that stuff is very empowering. You know, you're like, wow, I can take care of myself.
Yeah, right.
You know,
True.
like you're not just dependent on one other person for all of your health care. And so that was a big aha moment for me with herbalism. You know, and then fast forward a little bit, you know, so I'm like 19, 20 with that. And then after university, I was just getting more and more into it. And I worked in the organic food industry. That's how I know like the Guayaki guys. I was in organic food industry for about 8 years.
Cool.
Yeah, and so I was getting more and more like into supplements and superfoods and all that stuff. And then did formal studies in like 2006. With a teacher named David Winston, who is one of the founding people of the American Herbalist Guild. He has a school very near to Princeton, New Jersey. And so I studied with him for 2 years, and then went to a lot of conferences and just kind of kept going down the path. And then when I moved here to Costa Rica, actually 10 years ago, was like when I started really working with plants and people directly, because a lot of it was just working on myself, roommates and stuff like that, but it was very much a personal practice. And working with like teas and tinctures, not living plants and living people. So I didn't get into clinical work really until about 10 years ago, but I was 10 years into the study of it. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about working with like teas or tinctures or tablets or versus live plants, what's that like?
Well, it's the difference between sitting here with you or watching you on your Instagram.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like when I watch you on your Instagram, I'm getting a great dose of you.
Right.
You know what I mean? But it's different when you're within the vital sphere of who you are.
Totally.
And getting to see you as a human being and connecting with you as a brother in that way. So yeah, that's, I would say that's right at there, because the plants, like they have a personality. They're a living creature.
Totally. And I always, when I watch Sarah's Instagram, we were talking before we turned on the mics. Well, I said what I love about it is you're so genuine and obviously, you know, brilliant and bright in what you're talking about. But I think that's the other part of it that I wasn't thinking about, but sensing, was that your connectivity to the plant is also very genuine, you know, and personal. And there's certainly seems to be a a
communion.
communication,
Yeah.
communion.
Yeah, there is, and it's not just the plants; it's a natural world because really, like you can't isolate them, you know, and so they're fun to study as the individual. But you know, what was such a great teacher to me was actually living off the grid and in the jungle, because you really see the whole picture and how everything fits in with each other.
Yeah, can you unpack that a little more, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Versus isolating a plant,
right,
you know, versus the whole picture.
The whole picture, yeah.
In
I mean,
terms of how you relate to it, yeah.
Right. Well, it goes into a few different things, right?
Sure.
Because, well, philosophically, it's like reductionism versus holistic medicine, right? So an isolate of the plant versus the whole plant, which is a synergistic interaction between all the constituents in there, which is just a nice other name for chemicals that we use in plant medicine terms. But what you also get with the living plant, if you're working with them in the environment, and I'm not a farmer, I'll just put that out there right now. Like, I'm a good harvester. I fill a different niche. You know, I'm a processor with the plants. I teach about the plants, but I will say that I don't always participate in growing. You know, there's other people that are in my guild.
Dharma,
other people that are in my guild that do grow the plants.
Yeah.
But I love interacting with them in living situations and in real life and wild plants and all of that. And so, you know, like when you're with them and you're starting to learn them, you're observing everything else around them is the whole picture. So there's soil conditions, like who's pollinating them, like the little... I love looking at a plant and seeing like the little microcosms in them, like the little cobwebs and the insects that are living, and what's their world like. You know, that's the kind of stuff that like really brings out my childlike nature when I'm studying plants and the curiosity of them. And like what you and I were saying before when we were chatting is that like all the things I don't know, like so much. Like I look at the plants, I'm like, I don't know anything about who you are. And I think I know something. You know, and I'm observing you and how you grow, and I can give name to your color and how it makes me feel and all of that. But like really who they are is it's kind of mind-boggling. Yeah. It's really fun.
What types of special intelligence they have.
Exactly.
You know?
What do they see like when I'm sitting in front of them versus when you are?
Yeah.
You know?
Let alone ingest them potentially, and then how are they going to interact with a human organism?
Exactly, you know, because it's how they interact with us. But I also believe, and a thread that comes to the teachings of me and my partner Lala Palmieri is that, and what we've observed so much is, I really believe that the plants are experiencing us. And so, like, that's why we start to get sometimes addictive relationships with them, because I think the plants also get addicted to us a little bit, and they like the human experience.
It's a real relationship.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's a constant dialogue that's happening. I mean, that one right there, two of them in the Buddha head right there. I mean, they're experiencing us right now the same way.
Sure.
Was anyone here last year with that epic stage that we had, the village stage and the lighting system, plant led it was called? And so it's that technology of taking like the vibrations off the plant, which has been translated into a lot of sound, but this time translated to respond to the sound, so the light responds to the sound. And so like bass notes were blue, high notes, and so all the lighting on that stage was plant led.
Wow,
isn't that cool? I know. I mean,
that's like encapsulates. One thing I was going to ask you potentially is for people who will listen to this who are not in Envision. How would you describe Envision? And that kind of does a good job. It like kind of encapsulates what the vibe is here.
Well, and you know what too, the other parts of like working with the plants and as these living beings is so much like how they influence your day to day. You know, like whether it's like how the shade is coming down, the leaves, like the position of the leaves, what fruits are there, are they making a certain scent with their flower, the animals that live in them and how they change through time. And so that's the whole picture, you know, because if it's just that plant sitting right there, that doesn't actually tell me much about it. You know, besides its form, it's a beautiful still life, and we can scratch and sniff it, maybe nibble on it, but it's like trying to learn who you are just by looking at like your hand or something, or you totally out of your context.
Form,
yeah. So
really cool.
Yeah.
One thing I like to talk to folks, or just think about and talk to folks with is, you know, when you so you've like 20 years with largely your energy focused on, you know, a craft.
Yes.
And like, how does that impact your life in general? Like being focused like that.
I love so much that you use that word because a lot of my spiel is that herbalism is an art, a science, a craft, and a practice, right? And
True.
so to expand on the craft of it and how I've learned it is that the art of it is the big picture, right? It's like where you kind of look at things with a, with like a fuzzy eye, and you see the broad strokes and you see like form and shadow, but you don't see the detail of it. Would be like the art of herbalism is being able to zoom out, but also able to zoom in and then into the details, which is the science, right? Where we break it down into minutia, we reduce it, right? And that's reductionist medicine, whole medicine, reductionist medicine. But the reductionist medicine is also genius to try to figure things out and to see galaxies and cells. I mean, that's reductionist medicine. For as much as we we're like, ugh. You know, with allopathic medicine, like it's genius. It's
right.
So
the
genius.
question is, in what context do we use
exactly,
it?
Exactly. You know, and so then the art of herbalism is the formulation and knowing how the plants are going to work together for you, for you, for you, for you, for you, for me, you know, because the formula that is exactly for you is going to be different for one of us possibly, you know, and like how it reacts in your body and all of that and how the plants react. And so that's definitely the craft of it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And then the practice is doing it over and over again so you validate and invalidate yourself.
So you validate and invalidate yourself.
Yeah, because we have a belief system around what something should do.
See.
Right? But the plants are really just a channel for us to open up and facilitate our healing. So they stimulate our own healing. They do miraculous things like with antibiotics, and they do like go in and kill, you know, but for the most part, like they're stimulating our bodies to respond, right?
Like precursors to,
but because of like the individual that we say often in holistic medicines, we don't treat disease, we treat people. You know, and so the invalidation comes from when 25 in this people at work 25 people in this room take the same plant and they have the same reaction, but then one doesn't. Invalidated my belief system and what that plant does, and I store that away.
Right.
And that's the practice. And so what is different about you? How did you wake up this morning? Where are you sitting like today? Like what
kind of elements you working with?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
True. Right, because well, me and you know, your elemental reality is very different than mine.
Yeah.
And and therefore the herbs that are going to be our, you know, strongest allies are going to be different herbs.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Like
what is your strongest ally herb?
Well, it depends where I am.
What is it right now?
Neem.
Neem.
Only because, well, I have a relationship.
Externally or internally?
Internally.
Neem. Okay.
Well, only because I don't live in a humid climate, and so I'm already like a water, earth, fire person, and so then I'm coming to as we would say in Ayurveda, Pitta Kapha person coming to a Pitta Kapha environment. So it's just one of many options that I could choose to take air and ether and bitter and antidote the elements and allow me to enjoy my time in the jungle even a little more.
Nice.
Especially the first couple of days when I'm acclimating.
Yeah, definitely.
I haven't taken it in the last 2 days because I probably took a whole bottle of it the first day or two. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. How about you? Well, while you're thinking,
Yeah.
my favorite herb, I do have a favorite,
Oh.
and it's
Shut your ears, other herbs. Yeah, it's a favorite.
Is Brahmi, or is what the Ayurveda call Brahmi, which is
Bacopa, Moneri, or Gotu-Kola?
Yeah, Bacopa.
Okay.
But either are just good. Centella asiatica is how I think of Gotu-Kola and Bacopa Moneri.
But
Brahmi.
isn't there some what's the word?
Confusion?
Confusion or like debate on if
Definitely.
Brahmi is actually a formula of the two, or the two
Yeah.
are just analogs for each other and interchangeable depending on ecosystem and availability.
I think there's a debate on every aspect of those two herbs.
I think so, too.
You know, that could possibly be debated by, especially like Ayurvedic pundits.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And I don't get involved in those debates.
Because why? Same, but different.
Yeah. Yeah, but so as a yogi, it's a great ally. And as
It
a
is,
pitta
yeah.
yogi specifically, fiery, because like cooling, but also very much for the mind and like sattva, they say,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
clarity. And very helpful for meditative awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite herbs is
Yeah.
actually tulsi, which is an Ayurvedic herb as well, which is grown readily in the tropics.
Yeah.
I like it because it's even though it's an annual plant, it's a basil. It's a very regenerative plant because we can grow it by cutting super easily. So anybody can cultivate their own tulsi. Just so you know, and there's beautiful cooperatives out there, and if you drink it as much as I do, you're probably going to want to buy it. But it's also like you can have, you know, huge swaths of it if you have land to be growing tulsi. But I love it because it brings me, I'm a cannabis smoker, and so it's really good for cannabis fog and like if you just need to like clear a little bit. It's also an amazing adaptogen, and it helps me so much just like ground out because I'm a hummingbird.
I noticed that.
And you noticed that?
Well,
really?
you mentioned it on the dance floor the other night.
Yeah.
When we ran into each other.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
And I was like, yep.
Yeah, and like like all around, and the tulsi really helps to like calm me down that way. And I formulate it often with lemon balm, which is melissa, which is one of the great nervous system tonics. And so I drink these almost, I would say 5 or 6 times a week. I always drink, and you should too, always drink your tea, your herbs back to water. And so it
Say
does
that
them,
again?
drink your plants back to water. And so it does them the greatest service and the greatest, you're taking all of their force into you and then washing them clean with the water and then putting the structures back into the soil. And so I'll drink, you know, which is usually about a liter and a half of this blend back to water, like most days of the week. So it also has nettle in it. So lemon balm, tulsi, nettle, mate, yerba mate, and rose petals.
Beautiful.
Yeah. That's like my personal, really good.
Yeah, the tulsi doesn't, now that you say it, like, you know how you can like look at people and like, oh, that's an ashwagandha person. You know what I mean? Like,
totally. I'm
that's
not an
a
ashwagandha person.
No, but a tulsi, another great, my language, or Ayurveda language, vata, like, you know, just
Yep.
the herbs that are revered so much just because of, you know, how much they're helpful.
Oh, they're
you know?
amazing. The plants are amazing.
Yeah.
And the
I think
things
that's
that
the
they do-
big thing that you talk about, and then I think that's kind of like the message of what I feel like you're like, pay attention, these like plants, the herbs,
They're
and
there
it's
for
simple,
us.
you know?
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be hard.
No.
That's the thing. It's like people come on plant walks with me and they're like, oh my God, I know so much. And they get kind of overwhelmed. Like, don't compare yourself to me. I've been doing this for 20 years.
Yes.
Like, don't compare yourself to me. Just like start to learn your plants and
And-
work with them and take them and like everything that you can get to know about them, from where they live to how they make you feel, you know, and that's empirical knowledge and embodied experience.
Right, and most of us, we don't need to know that many,
No.
you know, unless we're going to be an herbalist.
Yeah, exactly,
You know,
exactly.
just like you said, you got yours that you do.
Yeah.
And, you know, and then occasionally maybe like something happens, I'm going to use something else that I don't normally do.
Right.
And,
yeah.
but
You go to
most
the
of the ti-
clinic.
yeah.
You know, you get to know a new plant, and then you have another one in your toolbox.
Yeah.
Or what we like to say in herbalism, your materia medica.
That sounds pro.
That's so pro. I know. But that's one of the things, right? Like you're
Yeah.
dropping all like your Vedic wisdom, I'm dropping all my herbal terminology. But when you start to study, you get a different vocabulary.
Yeah,
sometimes.
it's the semantics are
Yeah.
sometimes how it flows, you know.
Yeah,
It gets us
exactly.
inside of it
Mhm.
deeper, you know.
Mhm.
Because like that intuitive way of like you were describing the craft, and it, to me it feels much more like this it's the feminine aspect of the whole, whatever we want to call it, herbalism or life in general. It's has more intuition, like putting formulas together, especially for a specific person. Like, what is that person's organism communicating?
Exactly.
And then, like, what type of vibrational formula, because you have relationships with them, and you know how to just, all right, now put that, and then see what happens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when those relationships, like, you find when you're practicing that you kind of start to go to the same toolbox. It's like you put your toolbox together and you got it with you and you like what's in it because you know how to employ them, you know?
Yeah.
And so you keep going back to them, and then that relationship that you have, you start to, with the plants as individuals, you learn all the nuances on what they can also be beneficial for, therapeutic for, you know?
Yeah.
And it goes into actually one of the permaculture principles of and I teach this to my students, like figure out your stacking function plants. So like which ones have like the broadest spectrum of therapeutic action, especially for those of us who are travelers. I'm sure there's a lot of people out here who live either migratory lifestyles or nomadic lifestyles. You know, like if you're going to be traveling with your medicines, as you should, you know, just to take care of yourself when you're in movement. You know, like those stacking function plants are going to just really like be there when you need them. They're your allies, you know, and one of the most simple ones is like chamomile. And it's so common, it's mundane, you know, it's not exotic. And
it's in many
yeah.
people's backyards or
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. You were saying earlier how, well, tell us about like what's currently, what is inspiring you now in terms of your work and the direction that it's taking? Because we all have a direction that like is organic.
It's so interesting. It's the first time I'm talking about it, really, because I had an aha moment.
I see.
Just so you know, so I'm going to share my aha moment publicly. So,
Honored.
Yeah.
If you want.
I feel kind of scared, but I think it's good. I think it's a good one. So I have one of my therapists is an astrologer, so I have a reading every 3 months. I'm dedicated to my readings. They really help me just to kind of see what's going on and how to like check myself and follow my flow. I'm into the stars. And she told me that my north node is in Leo and my south node is in Aquarius, and that what I brought into this life through Aquarius is herbalism, and that it comes too easy actually for me. And so that's what I could continue doing in my life, and it would be just fine and things would be great. Or I can like go into the Leo North Node in 12th house, like whatever, and which is all about some different destiny of like movement. Like do. I'm like, oh, my destiny. She's like saying this stuff to me for like a year and a half. Like all this stuff's going on with your. So we're 39, right?
Yeah.
So we're Pluto square Pluto right now, which
Right.
is for those of you who don't know. And you're not there yet, or you've passed it. Pluto square Pluto is Pluto's the destroyer, right? He's the underworld too, and like he's breaking us down to help us build ourselves back up and in another way, right? And so, but like really facing our destinies, because in evolutionary astrology, it's all about where your Pluto's placed, and so I don't know. Supposedly, like I'm supposed to walk another destiny path, not herbalism. And so what I've been having these aha moments about, because I feel so proud right now about how Envision's been going.
Yeah.
Like really proud. Like I'm at 10 years in with this.
Yeah.
And, you know, like in my essence,
This is an amazing event.
Thank you.
It's an amazing event.
Thank you.
I go to
Thank
a lot
you.
of events. This
Thank
one's
you.
really special, and what you add to it,
Thank
the
you.
bit that I know is
Thank
part
you.
of what makes the Met.
Yeah, so for you guys who don't know, I curate all of our education, as well as the herbal clinic and the Village Witches experience. And so it's 6 different stages. It's the sacred spaces of like the fire, of the temple, of the red tent, the Village Witches stage, the village stage, root down stage. You know, but like my big work that I really love, that's very natural to me, is teaching. I love teaching. I love facilitating. I love holding space. I love mentoring. I just love that so much. And I teach hundreds of hours a year. You know, like I'm in person. Has any of my students in here? Nobody? Crickets? You could be my students. But you're my students right now.
True that.
Yeah, but I love teaching, right? And I love facilitating educational events. And so, you know, I think like some of my aha moment is maybe moving into advocacy work a little bit more than like the clinical herbal path, because I thought that's where I wanted to be, and I did a lot of studies, you know, and practice in it. It's these past 10 years living in Costa Rica, and the herbal clinic started, and you know, all of that. But I don't know, I think I'm going to move into earth advocacy a little bit more, and a little bit deeper with education. And I love event production, frankly. I want to bring more educational opportunities out there that are like next level and accessible. Yeah. I'm going to keep formulating that one.
Yeah, good.
You'll see soon.
Yeah, I have no doubt. What do you mean by advocacy?
Well, I mean, just voices for the planet. It's not just the plants, you know, like I have voice for the plants, but it's the whole thing. You know, I want to be teaching about ecosystems.
Right.
I want to help to bring people back to the forest, and not just like the literal forest, but the forest within, the imaginal forest, the figurative forest of like, there's no waste.
Yeah.
Everything has its perfect space, time, and function. The forest is perfect. It's constant flow of vital energy. The forest just being moved and from one life organism to the next. It's eternity in the forest, and it's perfect. And there's all these different relationships that are happening in the forest. And, you know, as I teach permaculture too, I'm like very rooted in permaculture. And in there, it's all about relationship. Right, like what are all the different relationships? We have collaborative relationships, we have symbiotic relationships, we have competitive relationships, we have predatory relationships, we have parasitic relationships, we have controlled parasitic relationships, we have neutral, if there's true neutrality, relationships, and that's all present in the forest, and it's perfect. You know, and so like what we talk about like circular economy, and we talk about like horizontal governance and all these different like sociocracy and holacracy. I'm like, well, what if, I don't know, I'm just kind of positing the idea and really meditating. What if the forest was our model?
I love this because, you know, as I mentioned to you, like one of the things I like to talk with folks, or the just general kind of concept for this podcast is to talk to folks who's, like Sarah, spent a huge part of their life focused on with their life force focused in a single direction. But then not just that, but then like what comes out of that. And to me, this is like a beautiful example of that, because my experiences with that is by like going into something specific, it ends up opening up to everything. And that's what it sounds to me like. Obviously, it's not even a sound, and I'm not commenting on your own life direction, but just my perception of your wisdom.
But that's how it feels, though. It's like I feel like I've been walking the road, and the road's just maybe getting wider.
Yeah.
I don't know. And with advocacy, you know, it's like if I could just get people back down into this. You know, Bill Mollison, the father of permaculture, said nothing is real except being on the ground. You know, he's like, stay on the ground and stay relevant to the change. And the 12th principle of permaculture is creatively use and adapt to change. The change that we can affect, I added this part, and the change that we cannot. You know? And so like staying rooted in that, because it's like the world's changing. I don't want to, I don't know, there's just something bigger out there that I feel like I could give some voice to.
Cool. All right. Last thing. Well, you already gave us a good book. I like to ask people what's a book. And remind me the name of the book.
The Witch of Portobello, but I have another great one.
Yeah, another.
So the witchiest of the witch books out there. The witches for the witch is The Mists of Avalon. Has anyone ever read that one? So that is one of the like the neo-pagan Bibles. So, and it really goes so beautifully deep into the face of the goddess from always through, you know, Arthurian legends and stuff, but it's really deep. The wisdom that comes out of that book, I've read it probably 6 times and listened to it on audiobook a whole bunch.
All right.
Yeah.
Good. Tell people how they can like find you, be in touch, learn about. I know people are going to hear this. I'm sure people here, but also people listening will want to know.
Thank you. Well, Envision Festival, so of course has given me such an amazing platform. I'm super thankful for that. So Envision Festival, and then I'm your friendly village witch. And I'm not the only one. I'm a copylefted moniker. So there's many village witches, and we are everywhere. And so mine is _village.witch_.
That's your handle on
That's
Instagram.
That's my handle on Instagram.
Underscore.
Yeah, they're out there. It's because I'm not the only village witch, and I came in late to the IG game. Yeah. And then
underscore. I would just want to get it right. Underscore village dot
witch underscore. So it's symmetrical.
Good. I got you. I can visualize it now.
Exactly. Villagewitch.org. And then my school that I've started is called Ecology Academy.
Okay.
And so we're foundationed in herbalism, permaculture, and mycology. And that's where we're, me and my 2 partners, Sylvan Fay and Lala Palmieri, where we're unifying all of our teachings, because we have a ton of classes and unique curriculum that we've done, from the herbal clinic to our course Permaculture for the Herbalist Path, to really beautiful mushroom immersions, to another course that we teach called Symbiosis, where we pretty much just go and like geek out in the woods and botanize and myconize and cool. and learn about ecology. So we've created an umbrella school, which is an international school, and we're traveling. So
amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
So ecologyacademy.com actually.
Ecology Academy. Great name. Another great name.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
I'm so happy to connect with you.
Me
I know.
too.
I think it's going to be the first of Many.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
And maybe one day I'll get to invite you onto mine.
Hey, just tell me when.
All right.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks so much for listening to the podcast today. Thank you to Sarah Wu. Thank you to Envision Festival. Really appreciate the support. Check out Envision Festival if you haven't already. Looking forward to another one when it's possible. Check out Sarah's website, villagewitch.org, to learn more about what they're doing. If you feel inspired, resonating, take some courses with her. Learn herbalism, permaculture, all the good things that she teaches, and her crew, Village Witches, teach. Some beautiful stuff, inspiring. Thank you again to Simrit for providing us with the wonderful music. And thanks for listening, everyone. Lots of love to you and your families out there. Wishing you great health, good vitality, happiness. Lots of cool episodes coming out real soon. 2 more from the Envision Festival and some more on deck. Life Force Academy Immersion, virtual this year. Attend from anywhere in the world. Would love to have you a part of it. Thanks so much, everybody.